Canada is actually leading the race in something. For once, Canada is on the board for home unaffordability. Toronto and Vancouver now outpace New York for unaffordability, believe it or not, which is insane, but chances are you aren't surprised either, because I'm not. Like, I'm shocked, but it's like, yeah, I'm not too surprised. So we have that to look forward to, among other things that make Canada just such a wonderful place. Yeah, this country's really turning into a dumpster fire. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel more than you could ever imagine. I'm going to be honest about something. I'm going to be very brutally honest. It might even piss some people off. That's how honest I'm being. I am looking. I don't know if I'm going to go through with it. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm looking at. I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't even know if that was English. I'm just kind of like living vicariously through Google searches. I'm looking at what it takes to be an expat. When you know, like expats living in Mexico or Florida or whatever it is, like I'm just like vicariously living through people that have fled Canada and living in like Costa Rica or different parts of the United States. Italy is also at the top of the list. Japan is also on that list. So is Panama. There's also these things called blue zones. There's like 5 major blue zones around the world. California is one of them, but so is Japan, so is Costa Rica. And the blue zones are basically where people have a way better quality of life and they live longer and they're happier, like into their 90s they live, kind of on average. So that's interesting. And so I'm just looking through Google, my algorithm's changing, and it's like, man, Canada sucks. Like, yeah. And that's not saying that I'm jumping ship. It's not to say that I wouldn't ever jump ship. My priority is me and my family, right? That's like my priorities, my kids, the future, my wife, and all that. I'm just looking, and I want to pass a question off you before you even begin the video. Have you ever either fantasized about that or even done it? Because I have been posting some stuff, asking questions like that on my X account, and people have been like very responsive to either places they want to go or places that they have actually fled from Canada to. So something to think about, I guess. I don't know. Not that I want to encourage like mass amounts of people leaving this country, but also we all have to kind of do what's best for us and our families. So I don't know. I'm just kind of like enjoying looking at YouTube videos of people doing that stuff. Without further ado, let's get into this video, because this is one heck of a segue, going from fantasizing about places to escape to looking at senators in Mexico engage in a fist fight over U.S. military intervention. Yep, this is a real thing. And then there they go. And honestly, this is something that I would have loved to see happen here in Canada. I would have loved to see Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh even just like throw down in the House of Commons. That would have been pretty freaking awesome. But in all seriousness, let's get into the news, because there's a lot of crazy things going on. And we are going to start off with America, specifically around the federal governor, Lisa Cook, how she got fired, then refused to be fired, and is now taking Trump to court. It's all very confusing and ever evolving.
Well, this actually comes on the heels of another firing by the president that is also being challenged. We just learned that the president, or the HHS secretary, Robert Kennedy Jr., has fired the CDC director. Now, this is interesting because she only just took the job a matter of weeks ago and was actually nominated to that position by Donald Trump himself. And so now she is actually challenging her firing by this administration, as we now learn that Lisa Cook, the Fed governor, is now going to have a hearing on her firing tomorrow and an adjudicated emergency case that will take place here in Washington. So we are now seeing where the president, who has been saying that he can do whatever he wants, The courts are now ultimately going to decide exactly how much power the president has, but more importantly, how far does that power actually go, particularly when we're talking about firings, and of course, one in this case, which deals with the Fed, which is seen as an independent agency of the executive branch.
Yeah, I mean, the president is always trying to bust norms and test limits and push the envelope. How credible are the allegations against Lisa Cook? Again, she has been accused anyway of mortgage fraud. There are no charges that we are aware of. So, the president is sort of freestyling here, talking about potential mortgage fraud and saying just the possibility of that would, rule her out as being on the Fed. Your take on that?
Well, what we are learning is that a member of the Trump administration who was placed in charge of a new department called the weaponization of the government actually is the one who lobbed these charges against Lisa Cook. And we are told that there was an investigation that is now open at the Justice Department looking into this. But as you say, no formal charges have been filed. In fact, as far as we know.
So my take on this is Lisa Cook is going to fight it for as long as she possibly can. And then one day you're going to see a massive shift in her tone going, I have chosen in my own volition to resign. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. And good luck, America. That's probably what you're going to see, because going against Trump, while he is the president of the freaking United States, has never been a winning strategy. And in terms of the Fed, Jerome Powell actually getting fired or resigning, I think that's going to happen sooner than later. Trump wants something to happen. He has a vision and he's not going to stop until it actually happens. That's my opinion, though. I'd love to know yours. And then, obviously America has a very strong leader. Canada doesn't. I challenge you, if it's that time of day for you to start, having some drinks or whatever, because it is Canada and I don't blame people for mixing it with their cereal if that's really what they want. Every time Mark Carney in this 32-second clip says, just not even take a shot. Just take a sip. Just a small little sip. Enjoy.
Dear Vika, it's a pleasure. I'll make a couple quick observations. One, there are many areas where we're cooperating economically, culturally. We also need to cooperate in hockey as well, because I was at that match in the World Junior tournament when Latvia beat Canada, and beat Canada fairly. I have to say, we could see it coming, beat Canada fairly. So we have much to learn from each other. We're stronger together, and we do that as well.
Something about Latvia and Canada and fairly, I don't really know. The contents of that clip were irrelevant. It was just a way for some of my audience to get a little bit drunk or tipsy should they choose to follow along with that game. And maybe I'll include that as a segment, right? Like a whole transition, the drinking game. And it'd be like the latest Carney, speech. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. But I feel like that's enabling alcoholism. Not that I want to be a part of that, but maybe I start drinking too. And then I just can't function for the rest of the day. But that's one of our leaders in Canada, the tippity top leader, unfortunately. Another leader in Canada is Danielle Smith, who sounds nothing like Mark Carney. In fact, she's a very bold and very kind of aggressive politician. Let's have a look at what she recently said.
What we're talking about tonight is Ottawa over. Do you want to hear the answer? Ottawa overtaxing us. I mentioned that at the beginning of the evening, that our program costs are 70% of all tax dollars. We only collect 40%. Ottawa collects 60%, and then they use political means to transfer it. Alberta, year after year, has $20 to $25 billion that is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years. $600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province. You don't think we might be able to do a little bit more on social spending if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? You don't think we'd be able to cut taxes a bit if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? It is $5,000 per Albertan that every single year gets transferred transferred out of this province for political reasons so that the Liberals can continue to spend it in places that vote Liberal. That is what is happening in the province.
Oh my goodness. And ain't that the truth? This is why Alberta is pissed. And that right there is why Albertans feel a level of patriotism that goes above and beyond just being like a proud Canadian, but more specifically a proud Albertan, because quite literally Albertans are working for the rest of the country in a way that the rest of the country can't relate to. They are kind of the ant farm of this country because so much money from Alberta goes and feeds the Liberal provinces, and it's absolutely disgusting. And that's why you're seeing Alberta say, we're going to separate, we're going to separate, we're going to separate. So I want to pass a question off to you. How do you feel about this? Because when it comes to Alberta, specifically Quebec, I mean, there's a lot of tensions, and it feels like it's a race right now to see who can separate, who can go through the referendum process the quickest. And since I did just mention Quebec, we now have to take a look at some new shift in policy that Quebec is pushing forward. So this article dating back to 2024, December, you have the Quebec Premier wants to put a stop to prayer in parks and public places. And what's interesting about this, why we're revisiting this 1-year-old article, is just today you have the Quebec plans to outlaw public prayer and move to strengthen secularism. This is crazy. The Quebec government says it's planning to ban prayer in public places as part of a move to strengthen secularism in the province. Wow. It says he'll take legislation this fall to outlaw public prayer. Says the government is uneasy with what he describes as a growing phenomenon of people praying in the streets, especially in Montreal. Premier François Legault last December stated his desire to ban prayer in the streets and other places, saying he was considering legislation. And this is in light of, not because of Christians, not because of really any religion other than, I think it was Muslims, were just like mass praying in the streets, blocking traffic and in parks, and it's getting to the point where it's starting to be a little weird. So I want to pass a question off you. Do you support this decision in Quebec? Do you not support it? And what's your reasoning why? And then we're going to shift away from that and take a look at one of the leeches of Canada, Canada Post, because Canada Post has an update on their negotiations with the Canadian government and the union.
Canada Post continues to hemorrhage money as revenues from the Crown Corporation fell by 37% in the second quarter of 2025. During this time last year, Canada Post had a $30 million profit. This year, the company reported a $407 million loss before taxes. The massive turnaround is being blamed on a sharp drop in parcel revenue following strike activity by the company's largest union. Postal workers have been without a collective agreement for more than a year and a half. The news comes as contract talks remain at a standstill after being delayed again this week.
$300 to $400 million loss. I think she said that was before tax, but I don't know. That's just, either way, that's very interesting. It goes to show that anytime the government gets overly involved with anything, because it is a crown corporation, if I'm not mistaken, it all kind of goes to shit. And Canada Post is on its way out. And speaking of on its way out, LNG was something that Justin Trudeau was heavily against, that Mark Carney recently criticized for the Trudeau administration being against it and basically not doing any good deals. And now Mark Carney is in Germany trying to sign these massive LNG deals. Let's have a little look, a refresher.
Prime Minister Mark Carney started his day with a grand welcome from his host, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. The two leaders signed some new deals to get more Canadian natural resources to European markets. And Carney said he's about 2 weeks away from announcing some of the so-called projects of national interest that will speed those exports to European markets. Carney said ports in Montreal and Churchill, Manitoba would be near the top of that project list.
A new port, effectively in Churchill, Manitoba, which would open up enormous LNG plus other opportunities and other East Coast ports for those critical metals and minerals.
If we can move goods out of this port year-round, we've got an absolute winner of an economic opportunity here.
From there,
Unfortunately, we can't, though, because the ice gets so thick at that port. You need to invest so much money into so many different icebreakers because it's just not that good of a port. It's kind of a project that should, people, analysts, right, think that it should be abandoned and we should just be focusing on exports from the West Coast and the East Coast and just give up on this Churchill port because it's so expensive to operate that year round, and the window of opportunity to actually operate it without icebreakers is limited, right? I don't know. We need to make money, and we should be optimizing even our transnational pipeline, which the Liberal government's saying, we don't need to optimize it. What's an extra 300,000 barrels a day that we're missing out on from optimization? Who cares?
Carney headed to a Baltic Sea shipyard where ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems, or TKMS, makes submarines. Canada is in the market to buy 12 new subs, and on Tuesday said TKMS and a South Korean company are the finalists to win the Canadian contract that could be worth more than $20 billion.
We need to urgently replace the fleet of submarines that we have with a much more capable and modern fleet. So that's really good news.
The TKMS CEO made his pitch for that big deal.
And allow me a comparison, sir. Our subs are quieter than Canadian snowfall, but tougher than a player in the Stanley Cup final.
And he suggested some of those subs could even be built back in Canada.
If they want or demand for special, reasons to build them in Canada, we would also be able for that.
The Prime Minister ended his busy day.
If you want to build them in Canada, sure. But even though they are newer tech submarines, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that they are still diesel powered submarines, which is effectively useless in modern day. You got to refuel them. We have diesels and they're just absolutely trash. In order for you to have a good, effective fleet of submarines today in 2025 and moving forward, you need nuclear powered submarines. They can go further. They can be underwater longer, less maintenance, just all around better. I do not understand the business move and the strategy to buy really old ancient tech with a bit of a facelift to make it a little nicer when it still is powered by diesel. Diesel has its place, does not belong on submarines. That's my opinion. I'd like to know yours. And then we got to take a look at our oil and gas because Alberta is in a tricky situation. So this article here from the Globe and Mail states that Alberta deficit could rise to $6.5 billion as oil prices, tariffs, woes hurt the economy. The bad news for Alberta's oil-reliant budget is set to get worse. Finance Minister Nate Horner says softening oil prices means this year's projected budget deficit is expected to grow by $1.3 billion and will now finish at $6.5 billion in the red when the fiscal year ends next spring. That represents a massive multi-billion-dollar swing in Alberta's financial fortunes, as it is coming off of a $8.3 billion surplus the year prior. Horner said oil prices, along with uncertainty created by U.S. trade policy, specifically conflict over tariffs, are hurting the Alberta economy and remain a significant risk. We are expecting many pressure on the economy and are outside of our control. He said, despite challenges, a radical response to the budget bottom line isn't the answer. We know how important financial stability is for Albertans, and we also know it hasn't been easy. Many Albertans are struggling with high grocery bills, utilities, and the pressure of mortgage or rent payments. We will face these challenges together, and that commitment stands even with a higher deficit. And I think that they would have even less of a deficit if they weren't giving money to Quebec and other provinces through the equalization payments. I can imagine how Alberta would be very pissed off. And something that is potentially going to piss off all Canadians is this next piece here. Apparently, a poll shows that 85% of Canadians want government regulation for AI. Globe and Mail says that a poll states. A new poll indicates an overwhelming majority of Canadians are in favor of regulating artificial intelligence, and almost half are worried it will contribute to cognitive decline. The Ledger poll found 85% of correspondents believe governments should regulate AI tools to ensure ethical and safe use. More than half, 57%, said they would strongly agree with that statement. It's very clear Canadians want government involved. Said nobody ever. Oh my goodness. That line right there just made my day. That is the funniest thing I'm going to see and read all day. Okay. Canada's artificial intelligence minister, Evan Solomon, said he will put less emphasis on AI regulation amid a global shift in which governments are focusing on AI adoption and away from safety and governance. The Trudeau government put forward an AI regulation bill targeting high impact systems, but Bill C-27 did not become law before the election was called, and it's not clear whether or in what form it will be reintroduced. The poll found, despite strong concerns about potential harms of AI, use of AI has increased 10% since March, with 50% of correspondents saying they have used an AI tool. I mean, even Google now, you go and you type something into Google and it now is using AI to give you whatever answer. And then there's also Grok, ChatGPT, Gemini. There's just so many different ways. But I do know that whenever the government gets involved in stuff like that, just like we read how someone somewhere is saying that the government wants them to get more involved with AI, no. The answer is just straight up no. The Canadian government, the Liberal government historically, or just like any general consensus of government involvement with almost anything unanimous across the board, leads to just shittiness in Canada. I don't know what it is, but less government is better. That's what the Conservatives stood for on the election. And that's hopefully what they stand for moving forward. And hopefully they can actually pull off a victory so we can live in a world in Canada where there is less government involvement. But something that does need to, be talked about here is this next piece, because Canada is setting a record. We're winning at losing. I don't even know how that's possible, but Canada's doing it. So you have Vancouver and Toronto outpace New York in home unaffordability. And here's why. The largest cities in Canada and the US ranked by housing affordability. Number one is Vancouver. Isn't that crazy? With a 3.1 million population, the gross median household income in 2023 is 86,000 versus LA's almost 13 million people and medium income household income of 124,000, which is what 60 to 70% more than what Canada is. And the benchmark home price is 1.2 million in Canada or in Vancouver. Isn't that just freaking sad how far gone Canada really is? And that's just Vancouver. That's not even other places. Canada is winning at losing. That's depressing. That's depressing that Vancouver and Toronto outpace. I never once would have thought that. I've lived in Vancouver, albeit in my van. I've also lived in downtown Toronto in a basically frat house for non-frat people. Just like working professionals that are in their mid 20s and 30s that were broke, that needed a place to live downtown. So they're like houses that are divided into a bunch of different rooms and shared kitchen. It's not really the best living circumstance at all, but it was very cheap when I was doing that. And it was also all about location. Yeah. And I can't fathom paying those prices now, what that would look like. I think I was paying for a small room downtown Toronto in a super, super big house. I think I was paying $600. I don't know what it would be now. That was back in 2017, maybe. Now it's probably way more. The average person that's working a regular office job or blue collar job, whatever it is probably having to dish out $2,500 for a studio or a 1-bedroom or apartment. I mean, that's absolutely insane. It's not sustainable. We're heading down this trajectory where we're outpacing LA and New York in our housing, and it doesn't feel like we're deserving of that. We don't have a big Hollywood the way that LA does. We don't have the Santa Monica Pier. We don't have Times Square in New York City. Canada is just blah, Canada's just overcrowded with like some big buildings in downtown cores, but it's not like America. Like, yeah, I can't wait to go to vacation to LA because like there's so much to do. I don't see people saying that about Canada, but whatever. It doesn't erase the fact that we're kind of screwed, and I don't know how it's going to get better. I just know that it's probably not going to get better with this banker guy who's losing to Trump every day. Yeah. Now I digress from that, and let's take a look here at what's going on with with shipping things to America, because an import tax is coming to packages worth $800 or less for products shipping to the United States. Canada just keeps losing.
Across the country on this Thursday, it is bad news, unfortunately, for thousands of small businesses in Canada. We're going to start there. The ones that ship their products to the United States anyway. As of tomorrow, there's a new rule that will kick in by the Trump administration. Here's what you need to know. Packages that are sent to the United States worth $800 or less in terms of their value will be hit with a new import tax or duty. And that fee could be anywhere from 10 to 50% of the value of the item, perhaps even higher than that. Again, it applies to packages worth $800 or less. About 1.3 billion of those kinds of packages were sent into the U.S. from around the world for a total value of almost $65 billion US dollars. This will apply to countries around the world, and that means, of course, a lot of problems for those companies and the postal services that send the products. Canadian companies bracing for the impact on their bottom line.
My worst fear is that people just decide not to buy at all, just because the price is uncertain, whether they're going to get it or not is uncertain.
This is leading to a lot of chaos now and a lot of worries in the global commerce chain, of course, over what this is going to mean. The Trump administration says that these smaller packages are often used to smuggle drugs. It's one of the reasons why it wants more oversight and monitoring. It also says it wants to encourage American consumers to buy from American businesses, not from cheap Chinese e-commerce sites like Temu and Shein. The issue, of course, is that all sorts of companies around the world are going to get caught up in this because the U.S. is simply a huge market. As a result of this confusion and chaos anyway, postal operations in at least 25 countries, including many in Europe, are temporarily suspending shipping these kind of packages to the U.S. until they can figure out how this is all going to work. Canada Post, meantime, is not among them. It will continue to ship to the U.S. It'll be using a third party to collect and send the duties directly to U.S. Customs. But you can imagine a lot of postal services do not want to run afoul of the Trump administration these days. Let's bring in CTV's Jeremy Sharon. He is in Ottawa. He's covering this story. It's going to have a huge impact on thousands of businesses. Last hour, Jeremy, I was talking to one woman who runs a business in British Columbia, and she said she's looking at upwards of 60% of tariff on her products, and that might mean she's forced out of business altogether.
Yeah.
Right. That's the situation many
elbows up, right? This is what happens when you have incompetence leading us, especially in trade negotiations with America. Is unfortunately, this is going to crush so many businesses, and it's going to hurt so many people. People are going to have to sell their house or move or whatever, and it's going to create a trigger, and it's going to create a recession. People have been saying we're in a recession for quite some time. The governments just keep shifting the goalposts as to what even defines a recession. But if there's ever been a time to be able to pinpoint one, it seems like we are on the brink of one right now. It's just getting really bad out there.
Small businesses are in, Todd. A significant increase to the cost to ship to the U.S., which means for the consumer, the U.S. consumer, that product is either going to double or more than double in this case, or it won't be available anymore. For other businesses, they're looking at not even considering offering shipping to the U.S. anymore. So any Canadian business, and any business around the world for that matter, but of course here in Canada, any business that has a significant consumer base in the U.S. is very fearful of the impact that this could have, because as you've touched on, their options are limited. They will face an increased duty that they've been able to avoid so far thanks to what has been known as a de minimis exemption. That is going away to start as of tomorrow, and so that means all of these products worth under $800 that previously could be exempt will no longer be exempt. They'll be subject subject to duties. Those duties could range, as you've touched on, Todd, many of which will be at least 35%. And it means a significant increase to the price of those products that are being offered to American consumers. So those American consumers have to be ready to pay more, or the Canadian businesses are going to have to absorb those costs. Many small businesses can't afford to make that decision. Some simply are going to no longer offer shipping to the U.S. So this could be disruptive, to say the least, for the small business industry in Canada. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business estimates about a third of small and medium-sized businesses in the country will be impacted by this change. And those who have, as we've touched on, a solid base of clients in the U.S. That is interested in their product, this could really be a significant hit.
Yeah, terrible news. All right, we're going to have more coming up, Jeremy. Thanks for this in the meantime.
Oh, my goodness, man. It's just so pathetic what's going on in this country. And that's why, I mean, even though it's just something that I've kind of entertained a little bit for fun as a pastime, living vicariously through other people that are sharing their stories or vlogging their experiences, why I've been looking at options outside of Canada. I don't think I'm going to move outside of Canada full time, but at some point you get pushed into a corner and you have no choice and you have to make changes, right? If it's like this everywhere across Canada, where do you go?